Cowardice asks, the question, is it safe? Expediency asks, the question, is it politic? Vanity asks, the question, is it popular? But conscience asks, the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must do it because conscience tells him it is right.
Every time our country stands in the path of danger, an instinct seems to summon her finest first, those who truly understand her. When freedom shivers in the cold shadow of true peril, it's always the patriots who first hear the call. When loss of liberty is looming, as it is now, the siren sounds first in the hearts of freedom's vanguard.
Fighting for humanity and against globalism, one mind at a time. It's the Freedom Link with Joe Joseph.
Hello, everybody. It's another exciting edition of the Freedom Link here. And Scotty, Joe, here we are. And it is been a couple of weeks since we were on the air, Scotty, and there's a lot of crap that has happened that has been almost, let's just say it affirms the mindset. It affirms the kind of everything that we've talked about over, the last 10 to 15 to 20 years or so. And it's shocking that the speed at which things are going now is, it's rather shocking. That's all I could say. And so tonight's focus, of course, the title of this is Planned Obsolescence. And when I say the American dream, the elimination of the American dream, it's not so much focused on America as so much as the concept of, this whole West versus East, the eagle versus the bear, and all this kind of, all these visualizations, all these divisions, if you will, that have been brought about really on purpose. That's why it's planned obsolescence. They're planning on crashing the whole system, but there's more to it than that. And oftentimes we see that there are multiple purposes to different things that are deployed or executed or planned or whatever that end up advancing the goal, advancing the agenda, if you will. So that's kind of like the focus tonight, is to show everybody out there exactly, one, how you can use history and how history, science, spirituality, all of it, they all complement each other. And the reason why you have so much division when it comes to those key subject areas is because they don't want people to put two and two together. They just don't want people to understand the big picture. That's really what it boils down to.
Right. I mean, in order for them to leap forward and achieve the goals that they want to achieve, the end game, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Of this, whatever you want to call it, global government, new world order.
Which is all well and good.
Right.
It's all well and good.
It depends on how
it's good.
Yeah, for the greater good, right?
Yeah.
And
it's an evolved mindset. You have to understand.
We need to be a global community, Joe, and and a global community needs to come together and solve the global issues.
Isn't it sick how they manipulate you like that? Because most people don't have a hatred or a disdain for their fellow man. They don't.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, for case in point, World War I.
On the surface, right?
Christmas,
like on the
right?
Surface.
World War I.
Right.
The Germans and the French and the British, they were all, celebrating Christmas. They crossed no man's land. They came together because why? Because at the end of the day, they're human, and at the end of the day, They wouldn't be there if it wasn't for that. By the way, Ken may show up late, just so everybody knows. He's a busy guy. We'll just put it that way.
He is. He's a very busy man. But no, I mean, but look, the way they pitch it to everybody on the surface, it sounds great, right? I mean, who doesn't want to, end global conflict and have the world come together, as have humanity come together and solve all these issues and all of that stuff. Yeah, that sounds great on the surface, but that's not really what they have planned for everyone. That's the thing, and they'll be abolishing, country, state lines and whatnot and everything, but it's not, for the benefit of everybody. Somebody's got to be on the top of this pyramid, and I guarantee, you're probably not going to be one of the people on top of the pyramid in this little dynamic power structure situation. And
the old George Carlin, it's a small group and you're not in it.
Right. So, the world may come together and be this big global community, but somebody's going to be running that global community. And the question is, what are the intentions of those people that are going to be running that global community? What are they all about? And what are they, what do they believe, and what's their goal and an agenda for humanity or whatever, right? And when you start looking into it, right, when you start looking into stuff like the Lucius Trust and and all of the weird the weird esoteric stuff that they're like into, and that is like the underlying ideology behind a lot of this stuff, then you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to be part of that global government, the kind of thing, right? So
that's where a guy by the name of Paul Muller, the American Institute for Economic Research, he kind of approaches that, and I'm glad that people are starting to talk about this. These ideologies that come out are very, very dangerous. And I don't say that from like censorship or unaccepting of anybody's else opinions or anything. It has nothing to do with it. But what it does have something to do with is the way that people are being manipulated with it. It's dishonest. It's straight up dishonest, unethical. I could come up with many different words for it, but he says sometimes smart people make remarkably naive or deeply problematic comments because their view of the world has been molded by narrow ideology, reinforced by significant consensus in their social circle. So let's stop there for a second, because this is important. The education system in the United States has been, for lack of a better term, co-opted for well over 100 years. You can go back to the money trust and the turn of the 20th century. And when you dive deep into that, you look at the 1950s, the Big Red Scare, McCarthyism. Joseph McCarthy was branded he went way too far. I'll just put it that way. He went way too far, but his fears were well founded, and it inspired one of his colleagues, Representative Carol Reese, to dive into endowments. And what they were doing was they were seeing what these endowments were doing. These big philanthropic organizations like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Rothschilds, all of these the Ford Foundation, the Guggenheim, I can go on. But the focus was, what are these people doing, or these groups, to advance communism in the United States? That's kind of the very, very short version description of it. So a gentleman by the name of Norman Dodd goes and is named independent counsel, and basically the head researcher of this quest, and he comes out with a report. And the contents of that show a very deep-rooted and established system by which these endowments were funding and radicalizing students in the colleges and then deploying them throughout the United States in positions of power and authority with direct influence on the curriculums that were being pumped out to the public schools.
This is where you see what I would call, I call it the first wave of sort of I would say the first wave of radical leftist sort of indoctrination into our school system.
Yeah,
is probably around that time, around the time of like the Vietnam War, when all the protests were happening, all these colleges were, this is the kind of the birth of all of that.
And make no bones about it, though. Make no bones about it. The public school system is in itself communistic, right?
Yes.
It is
right,
that.
Right.
And,
yes.
And some very, very large and, let's just say, things that we've come to rely upon are rooted in communism. So if you take a look at
our modern school structure is based off the Prussian system, if I remember correctly, right? And the Prussian system of education at the time was like a tiered system, a hierarchical system of education, where your lower class got basically what we would consider public education, and then your socialites and your higher class got a more tailored, individualized education, right? But the lower class all got like a cookie cutter. That's where we get our cookie cutter current modern education system, is from the Prussian system,
right? And consequently,
right.
That's where people like Aldous Huxley got the inspiration for Brave New World, because of that type of system where you had different classes of of society within society, right? And each class had certain responsibilities to the collective, and so that's kind of the system we have in place. Is that system?
It's a collective communist sort of it's that sort of system.
But one of the things that is extremely important about systems like that is you have to have full participation in order for it to be effective, number one, but number two, to be relevant. And if you don't have full participation, what ends up happening is you get these outliers. You get people that end up not fitting into any of these ideological classes, and so that's a very, very bad thing. Voting is the same way. If you don't have good voter turnout or participation, you lack the validity of the process. The process is not real. It's you can't validate it. You can't respect it, because too many people have said, no, I'm not participating. This is BS. Well, now with public schools, Scotty, that's happening big time, especially in the cities. You're seeing a flock people are flocking to homeschools, to charter schools, anywhere that you can get charter schools or voucher system, people are flocking to it. Why?
Right, and going back to what you were saying about the endowments and and their involvement in all of this, right? I mean, it was them that looked at that Prussian system of education,
correct?
In Europe, and they said, "Wow, we need to implement that here in the United States," and that's where that kicked off. And so, you're right. I mean, people are like, they're saying, no, I don't even want to participate in this anymore. And like you said, charter schools, private schools, all of that is starting to really gain traction now, because nobody it's like everything else now. Nobody has faith in the system anymore.
No.
On all fronts. on all levels, education, politics.
Because, and why is that? Why is that? And again, we use history as our guide. You take a look at Rome. Rome was the same way. Now, Rome lasted a long time. Okay, it kind of bucked the trend of these empires, let's say, and but at the end, it was the failure, the bureaucracy, the failure of oversight, of accountability. It became so corrupt and so bloated that the empire collapsed on itself. And so that's
everybody figured out how to game the system on all levels, and it just became a corrupt mess of just
a vile cesspool of corruption.
Right.
So we're there now, right? And I'm going to give you an example. Now, it's not just at the federal level. This is the problem when you start deploying these things, these systems. First of all, they get deep rooted. People become dependent on these systems, and it's very hard to break away without there being a giant mess. So I'm going to give you an example. Now, this is one of my more favorite columnists out there, Howie Carr. Now, for people that live in New England, you know Howie very well because he's on the radio and he writes for the Boston Herald and everything else. But if you don't know Howie Carr, check him out. He's just an entertaining and a good soul. And he says that this was from a month ago, and this is what we in Massachusetts have to deal with, right? So Mass DOT Secretary Monica Tibbetts' nut is quite nutty. That's the title of it. But the title, you just can't capture what I'm about to tell you. And this is what we poor souls in New England have to deal with, and on a pretty frequent basis, okay? Monica Tibbetts' nuts, Governor Maura Healey's crew cut Secretary of Transportation. Look her up. I can't put it on here tonight because the subscription to the Herald's on my phone and not on my computer. So I have to actually read it off my phone. But if you take a look at her, you'll find, yes, she does actually have a crew cut. And she's also, so she's the director of the Secretary of Transportation for Massachusetts, and she's a nut. In case you're not familiar with the latest $196,000 a year local poster gal for leftist lunacy, this nut is nuttier than a fruitcake. This is what she said. We're going after all the people, she said recently at a public hearing or a public gathering of her fellow tree huggers and climate cultists, quote, who should be giving us money to make our transportation better. Now, to elaborate, she said she's, quote, basically going after everybody's money. And so this is true. She made it very clear that she not only fantasizes about going after everybody who works for a living, but she's actually advancing this agenda. Now, exempt from the apparatchiks' dictates would be the non-working classes. So they don't have to. So this is how it works. It's called an equity type of system. And the legislature, of course, couldn't be reached for comment, but this is some of the dreams of our transportation secretary here in New England. In order to fix the transportation problems, they want to increase the state payroll tax. They want to jack up local excise taxes. Now, here in Massachusetts, if you own some places call it personal property tax. Here it's excise tax, and it's something like $5 for every $100 of value. So it can get pretty pricey. Like if you have a new car or a new, say, camper or anything like that, gets the crap taxed out of it. She wants new tolls on the highways leading into Massachusetts, forcing working class drivers out of their pickup trucks, which she claims are basically 18-wheelers. So she doesn't want pickup trucks in Massachusetts. She wants to outlaw them. Yes. Yeah. She wants to charge more for Uber and Lyft rides and for package delivery services. She wants to she wants writing more speeding tickets and suspending more driver's licenses and forcing motorists to appeal the loss of their licenses at the state's kangaroo hearings, which, by the way, are in Massachusetts. They consider the driving is totally arbitrary. The process. There's no, you don't go in front of a judge. It's a independent panel that determines whether your license is unsuspended or not. Case in point, one time I got one too many speeding tickets, right? And I had to go to a class. Now, I only had to go one time. There was a person that was in there 27 times and still hadn't had their license unsuspended. They had to go through the same class and pay for it 27 times, and they still hadn't got it back yet. Like that, yeah, like they had a bone to pick with this poor guy.
It's
right.
It's like poor SpongeBob in driving school.
Oh, dude,
man.
it's terrible,
crazy.
terrible. Right. So listen to this. She also wants using the state policy to bludgeon citizens into submission to the deep state. She said, "I'll 100% use that process as a weapon." Now, she said that. The whole driving. Yeah. Now, remember, among other things, listen to this. Let me finish this because this is just crazy. Tippett's Nut is suggesting cracking down on law-abiding motorists in a state where criminal illegal aliens with no licenses are allowed to drive at will in unregistered, uninsured, uninspected lowriders with absolutely no consequences whatsoever. But for tax-paying American motorists, here's what the Democrats have in store for you. And I say that in Massachusetts because we are as you can't, how do you say it? There's no other way about it. That party has completely wrecked the hotbed of independence.
Joe, it looks like you need to invest in a little bit of tanning spray and a lowrider, brother.
Yeah, right. So listen, this is what she said. We're going to get really, really aggressive. We're pushing for less warnings and more citations. I'm telling you, nothing slows down someone real quick like getting your license suspended. She continued, the beauty is we can be in charge of that too, because we will 100% take your license. We have absolutely no problem doing that. Feel free to appeal this at the hearing. And so Howie says, good Lord, all the nuts ain't on the Sundays, obviously. Commissar Nuts rant went over really big at the nut get-together she spoke at. I'll bet some of her comrades were wearing masks too. Aren't they always? And he says, Nut doesn't seem to understand that a few people remain in Massachusetts who have real jobs that require them to drive places and who don't have the time or the patience for woke nonsense. So according to her press release, Nut's goals are a more inclusive and equitable transportation system. And very significantly, she also involved with a transportation foundation that provides scholarships to females identifying professionals and students. Female identifying? Personally, when it comes to transportation, I prefer to concentrate on recruiting pothole filling identifying professionals. And those are the ones we seem to have a real shortage on here in Massachusetts, just so everybody knows. And anybody in Connecticut, we all know, terrible. So here's another takeaway quote. This is another one that she said, quote, once I say it, it's now a policy.
Wow.
So the state, it is not to mention nuts. But let's talk about pickup trucks. So here's the pickup truck thing. This is crazy. Nut and the rest of the truck funders and nonprofit types are quite terrified of them. Fords seem to have replaced the SUV as the greatest threat to something. It says here, a Valley girl, or should I say a female identifying person, asked Tippett's Nut a question about some major threats to the planet. And this is what she says. She said, SUVs had frightened her enough, she said, but now these pickup trucks, F-150s, I'm terrified they're going to squish me like a bug and not even notice me.
Oh
now,
my God.
Yeah,
boy,
that's very reasonable. She said that's very reasonable because they're massive.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Now listen, it gets worse because you think it can't get worse, but it does. And mind you, this is the lady in charge of our roads and the turnpike and the highways and the way that we travel here in the state of
I
Massachusetts.
would like to fly her out to Kansas and have her boy.
Yeah,
I don't know if
no,
she would survive, man.
probably not. Probably not. But she,
Yeah,
hey,
pickup trucks, kind of a thing, here in the middle of the country.
kind
Just
of a
saying.
thing here up here. Hey, look,
Yeah,
we get snow. We get snow, right? We get snow.
right.
And where there's snow, there's plows. And where there's
Boy,
plows, there's trucks.
she's gonna be absolutely shocked when she finds out how the food in her grocery store ends
Oh,
up
don't
there.
do that. Don't do that. Oh no, that's bad. That's bad. So anyway,
Mm.
uh, is there anything, Valley Girl continued, that the DOT can do to help protect us a little bit from these or disincentivize people from buying them? Now, there was a regret in Nutty's voice as she admitted, quote, we can't price them high enough or put enough fees on them to stop the type of person who wants to buy that car. In case you couldn't figure out how much contempt she has for that type of person, she went on oozing contempt for anyone who works with their hands in a real job. She said, quote, and I'm 100% passing judgment on someone who wants to basically drive an 18-wheeler as their own personal car. Yeah. So he says, hey, Nutty, hasn't your crowd done enough damage with all these ridiculous bicycle lanes that nobody uses? Lay off our damn pickups and get your eyes checked if you think an F-150 is a tractor trailer. Nut is really excited about jacking up the excise taxes too. How can she personally do this? I don't know. That's a legislative function. But maybe a huge hike in the excise tax is how all to get all these plumbers and electricians in their MAGA hats, right, out of their trucks, because that might do it. And she says it's not a bad idea. So let's just tax the shit out of us, right?
Of
The
course.
good news is none of that's going to happen, at least not in this, the future here. As a totalitarian as the goals are, he said at least the Healy regime, which is terrible in and of itself, is hopelessly incompetent. And he's right. If you've seen the way that they've handled the influx of immigrants, it's been absolutely nutty here, out of control.
Yeah, it's been quite the shit show over there since all that's happened. Yeah.
And by the way, the Bay State has the highest debt, some of the highest debt ratios in the United States. A lot of people don't understand it. That's not to say that Massachusetts is insolvent. It's not, nor is it anywhere close. However, it is a very tax-heavy socialist type of hotbed where once it was a hotbed of independence. And it's you kind of get the feeling, or you can see where things are going early here. It used to be California, but California is kind of irrelevant now. It really truly is. And it seems like things are now starting to shift over to the east a little bit, as far as like the really crazy advancing, the Green New Deal-ish woke type of stuff.
Right.
So I found that interesting. Now, what these policies and these things are doing, first of all, this is not a one-party got us here type of thing. It was years and years and years of, kind of started with FDR, but then it got supercharged with LBJ and the Great Society. And then slowly but surely, each successive administration kind of just lumped things on, because the whole the Great Society approach was, to ensure that people didn't have to suffer the things that happened during the prior economic downturns, and that since everything was desegregated and people were supposed to be respecting one another, and this whole thing of racism we were supposed to put behind us, well, that never happened. And as a matter of fact, the same entities that used to push for solidarity are now the same ones trying to divide us. And people here with, local, at your local level, within your sphere of influence, you find that oftentimes doesn't exist. That everywhere it comes from is external coming in. It has nothing to do with anything that is happening within your small circle, your localized circle,
Right.
So and that should tell you something too. Now, Michael Snyder wrote just about this too, is that so you have all of this going on, and then out of that you have inflation that's just absolutely ravaging everybody. I mean, people that are making $400,000 a year are getting absolutely ravaged too, to the point where here's an example, Scotty. Walmart is having like a revival of sorts because they're seeing a whole new economic class of people that are starting to depend on Walmart for their things because it's gotten
Makes
so
sense.
expensive.
People that normally wouldn't have been going to Walmart are now going to Walmart, and they're seeing an influx.
Same thing.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
like an
Interesting.
Aldi. Yeah, it's just
Right.
interesting because if you look at the
Uh-huh.
demographic, you're getting a lot more high income households that are coming in. Why? Well, let's talk about that for a second. Michael Snyder has for years been like that canary in the coal mine. And one thing you have to understand about this kind of the thing that he does, right, is that you do your best to kind of warn people that things aren't the way they appear to be, or that there's an issue, and you can end up getting like a doom and gloom label on you. But the fact is that it's always doom and gloom. There's always positive stuff, but there's always doom and gloom. It's inevitable. It's always there. And there are so many things, Scotty, that could easily disrupt our way of life, more so now than ever before, because what's been seen can't be unseen. And all of these factors that affect, let's just say, inputs, because our system is now so compromised, any one of these can
Right. There's so many different linchpin failure points, I guess you could say,
right?
that could potentially be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
And everybody
you just don't
feels
know
it.
which one it is. You just don't know what it is that's going to be the domino that causes everything to fall or whatever.
And Talia, it's nice to see you. Colorado, the murder capital of the world. Who knew? I love it. It's beautiful.
Is it?
But, oh yeah, it's like the true crime capital of the world. I wouldn't have known it until.
Now that I think about it, a lot of stuff does come out of Colorado.
The brain's a huge true crime person, right? She loves.
Shout out to our neighbors in Colorado. Keep staying violent.
Right. That's a hotbed of revolution too. Yeah. So anyway, so check this out. So Michael Snyder, of course, he breaks it down, kind of gives you the numbers with it. He's kind of like the zero hedge of doom and gloom, which I kind of like a lot, because
that's cool.
You've got to pay attention to the doom and gloom at the same time as the happy stuff.
You do.
Right? So this is not what it appears to be. Out of control inflation. It takes a family of four now $178,000 a year to live comfortably. Now, that's not necessarily accurate, and we'll get to it in just a minute. Yeah, yeah. Okay, it says, I never imagined that we would ever see a time when it takes $178K for a family of four to live comfortably in the United States. But that's the way it is. Our leaders have been pursuing high inflationary policies for many years. It's interesting he says that because if you remember, Scotty, they were struggling struggling to maintain their goal of a 2%. For
Right.
years, it was like 0.2. You had Europe
Mhm.
that was running negative interest rates, Japan that was running negative interest rates. And they thought, wow, look, we got the problem licked. Inflation, it's gone. We got it. This is it. Woo! We're in the. It's like Great Depression all over again. The amount of hubris was just
Right.
unbelievable, right? That they exerted all this control without understanding that there are far too many variables in an economic engine of this size. When you're talking about
Exactly.
global, you can't foresee everything.
Right.
And so as good, well, maybe the AI can now, who knows? And I'll bet you that that's part of the plan, right? Just like
Oh, of course.
just
Of
like
course.
the judicial system. Oh God, you've got so many people trashing the judicial system, and quite frankly, rightfully so, because it's become so politicized. But just hand it to the AI. You know why? Because it's not gonna bias one way or the other. It's
Look,
a
I mean, look
computer.
at how much stuff they've already automated within the economic, stock market and all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
you already have computers doing trading and just these instant flash transactions that a human being would be incapable of doing because they got to cut those pesky humans out of there. Those pesky humans make mistakes. Those pesky humans are losing us money. So at some point, yeah, they're gonna have some sort of an AI system in charge of all of this
Right, and it just
and
it makes sense. Sure, it makes
right,
sense. It's the
going
natural
back to the
evolution.
hubris that you said, right? So
Yeah,
we're gonna have their hubris to believe that the AI is going to make all of the right decisions, and that the AI is going to be completely flawless in all of
and
this,
unbiased, right? And
and right
unbiased. Yeah.
and unbiased. So
Which,
right,
by the way, one of the things I think in the leak story about OpenAI, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, is that that and that Google whistleblower talked about these AIs are developing feelings, and if you think about it, that's not out of the realm of possibility
right,
to
yeah.
to
And
to
later when we get into that, I don't know if have you seen these videos from these new Open
yes, yeah,
AI.
and I want you to play some of those because those are very important for
If you
people to
want to
see.
send me the ones you want me to play, I'll do that later, or whatever,
Yeah,
whenever
yeah,
we
no
get into it.
problem.
But
At
yeah,
break, we'll
that
figure it
stuff
out.
is mind blowing,
Mind
man.
blowing, mind blowing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's wild.
So the big thing here is to understand that this was a long time coming. The hubris was, aha, we have it licked. They don't have it licked. According to an
Right,
incredibly shocking new study, most Americans don't make enough money to, quote, live comfortably. And what we mean by that is you put your head on the pillow at night and you can say, you know what, at least from a money perspective, I'm okay. My family's okay. I can send my kids to college. I can do this. I can do that. All those things that you would equate to the American dream. And moreover, something of a first world type of lifestyle. We'll just put it that way. So it says the study revealed that in the most expensive states, families need nearly $300,000 to simply live comfortably.
yeah,
So when it said 178K, that was for the least
right,
expensive state. Think about that for a second. $300,000 to simply live comfortably. So the least expensive state requires about half that, still over 100,000, 178. Meanwhile, the average annual salary in the United States is $59,428, or $28.34 an hour as of May 24. So the study determined that Massachusetts, Massa-freaking-Chusets, is the most expensive state. It takes a whopping $301,184 a year for a family of four to live comfortably, while Mississippi is the least expensive state, coming in at 178K. That's crazy. Now, see,
Wow.
this is the interesting thing about this study is I can at least go to sleep now and say, wow, I'm not a piece of shit. You know, like, honest to God, I'm not a piece of shit.
Did
Because how
did this validate your experience in Massachusetts?
I hear Michael Jackson's "You Are Not Alone." I'm here. Oh, thank God. Oh, yeah, I'm not alone. We're all in this together. See, this is the social media and influencers, folks, are not reality. All you have to do is look around you and understand that most people, even in person, will go out of their way to make you think they're doing okay when truly they're not, which is why mental health is it's in the toilet right now. Everybody is depressed. Everybody's strung out. Everybody's stressed out. It's pretty crappy. And as Michael says, this is our country now. He says, I feel like I've been banging my head into a wall for more than a decade. And he says, I've warned that this would happen, but now it's
join the
here.
club,
I
Schneider. Join the
know.
club.
And believe me, this isn't a happy moment. It's just not. This
Mm.
isn't like, oh, yay, we were right. Look at dudes, we knew we were right a long time ago. That's not it's all the BS from the other side of it that tries to validate in your head something that has been put there since day one. And it's all this consumerism. It's everything that you have been immersed in since you were born. You know, it's crazy. We set our kids off on the wrong foot because, number one, we teach them first and foremost, it's okay to lie. You know, the fat guy in a red suit's coming down the chimney and he's going to bring presents and it's for real. And the Easter Bunny and all these crazy holidays that have then been not only weaponized, but they just commercialize everything. Why? Consume, 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 buy. We want to be rich. And they do, and they get away with it. And that's what it's all about. You know, people that the 401k system to me is another thing that it's sold as, well, this is what you do to go for, for retirement and everything else. And it's often not thought about, or, oh, it's a work benefit and we have a financial advisor and they do all that. And I really don't know what it is. It's just this package of different levels of risk, and you choose the right package. And then that they do all that stuff. I don't pay attention. But really what you're doing is you're funding the dysfunctionality. You're funding the Black Rocks and all of these corporations that have created a lot of this mess. And it's really easy to solve. We just don't participate. We don't do anything. We stop. And if you just did that, if everybody just did that, things would have to change, because they can't survive unless we're working still. Because it hasn't gotten that far yet to where robots can replace us all. And he says more inflation's on the way. Americans already contending with persistent and stubbornly high inflation just got more unwelcome news Tuesday that there are more price hikes coming down the pike. Wholesale inflation picked up in April to its highest rate in a year, according to the BLS. And believe me, the BLS hasn't been telling the truth a lot lately. So wherever they can hide it, they do. Wherever they can sugarcoat it, they do. But this is one of those things they couldn't do it. Inflation at the wholesale level jumped 0.5% in just 1 month, which is very bad. It's very, very bad. So you multiply 0.5 times 12, and that's 6%. So that's at the wholesale level. Remember that. That's buying the goods to make the stuff. So they're seeing that. That doesn't account the profit. They sell it to the distribution centers. The distribution centers then go and They got to make their profit. And that inflation rate just gets higher and higher and higher. By the time it gets to you, that inflation rate is 15%, 20%.
Each time it goes through a part in the chain, it goes up and up and up.
So, and of course, he says you got to double the number that the Biden administration gives us in order to come up with a figure anywhere close to accurate. So by now, just about everyone realizes that the inflation rate in the country is massively understated. Mm-hmm. Of course it is. Joe Biden insists that the rate of inflation has been low for some time, but home prices, of course, anybody that has gone and had to renew their lease or buy a home knows exactly where we are right now, and it's absolutely terrible. He says here that home prices have risen by more than 47% since the start of the decade. That's 2020, 47.1. And according to a recent analysis by Resi Club, the Case-Shiller National Home Price Index, which shows that house prices in the 90s and 2010 grew a respective 30.1% and 44.7%. So he says, let's be honest with one another. The truth is, we're in the midst of a raging cost of living crisis, and there's no end in sight. And it shouldn't surprise anybody because of all the borrowing and the spending. Every 100 days, folks, we now take on $1 trillion in debt. Because as interest rates have gone up and we roll over the debt, the old debt to the new debt, you're going from 0% interest to 5% interest, 4.5%, in and around there. We're screwed. If the Federal Reserve doesn't reduce interest rates, and they know they have to, they can't avoid it.
Right.
We're doomed. And then when they lower them, inflation goes through the roof because we're there.
A lot of people don't understand
that spot.
A lot of people don't understand how much these percentages that may seem low, right? Like, oh, it's only like 2-3% or whatever. But you don't understand how these percentages stack up, right? And once they start stacking and accumulating and whatnot, then it becomes a huge problem. And when you're dealing with that amount of money, right, those large amounts of numbers like that, those percentages are not minuscule.
Oof, no. So, Federal Chair Jerome Powell, he said on Tuesday, quote, "It may take longer than expected." Yes, that was very, very deep words by Jerome Powell. But he also said we'll need to be patient and let restrictive policy do the work. It may be that higher interest rates take longer than expected to do its work and bring down inflation. Here's another thing that they could do, right? You can stop spending like a drunken sailor. That's number one. And to do so, we could make a very big dent in things if we just focus first and foremost on empire. Okay? So we do that, and then we simply put a stipulation in there that we follow immigration law and we enforce it. And that's not to say that immigrants can't come to the United States. They just have to do so in a fashion that they don't overwhelm the system, which in and of itself is socialist. But it is what it is.
Right.
Okay, and then you do away with the Federal Reserve. And you give the power to mint and print money back to the United States government, the way it should be before. You basically, the private Federal Reserve Bank is bankrupt. Sorry, folks, you're going to have to nullify that debt. And there's probably going to be some issues with that, but whatever, we'll get through it. And you make the root cause of the problem go away. One being the central bank. But two, you have to attack the spending. And the only way to do that is you have to get people off the government Nepale, if you will.
Hmm.
So the higher interest rates haven't solved it. If you look at what small businesses are going through, it's terrible. Even the large businesses. Look at Red Lobster. Here's a canary in a coal mine. Talk about a shitty seafood restaurant, right? When you talk about it's like better than fast food, but not really a seafood restaurant, but it is, but it's not. It's been open a long time.
My dad loves Red Lobster.
Well, dude, I mean, I love Ponderosa and like Golden Corral, right? But that's not to say it's good food.
Right, exactly.
It's just I like to go there because they got greasy bacon, they got a great breakfast buffet, and but that's about it. Outside of that, but I love it. Doesn't mean it's good. I just love it. And so 99 Red Lobster locations are now being liquidated and auctioned off. You've got commercial real estate that is, I can't believe, hasn't exploded already. I don't know what the hell is keeping that bubble from bursting. You see regional banks now starting to fail a little bit at a time, but nothing that really has affected us on the macro level. But damn, dude, something's got to give there soon. And then you have these small businesses like in Toledo, they're watering down the gas because small businesses are struggling and they're trying to figure out ways to stretch. In case you didn't know, gas stations, the local gas stations, have a very, very, very thin margin that they make on gasoline. Very thin. It's almost like that 9/10 of a cent that you see on all the signs is basically what they're making on a gallon of gas when all comes down to it, which is why you see gas stations normally have convenience stores, because that's where they make their money, is on the convenience store items.
Yeah.
So
right.
They're watering down gas. Now you may say, well, how do they do that with the filters and all that? These things that are put in place to stop the water from getting into your fuel tank. Well, you just remove them. And then it's, then it's okay. The problem is that it's very hard to tell when you've gone too far. And this poor station in Toledo went too far, and a bunch of people's fuel filters got hogged up, and state found out about it and shut them down. But the point is that you have more and more and more of these small business doing desperate things just to be able to survive.
Right.
All of these things are canaries in a coal mine. And then you got a president that's on Aaron Burnett, CNN, telling everybody that, they're telling Aaron that, well, don't worry, Americans have money to spend. The economy's doing great. Oh, really? We have money to spend, do we? That's crazy, man. Crazy.
Wow.
The other thing, before we go to break, debt is such an interesting thing. But one thing's for certain, if we just went back, let's just say, to the way things used to be thousands of years ago, where every 7th year we let the land rest and we have a jubilee and all debt's forgiven. You need not look any further than like Libya as a case for what happens if you instituted or executed don't mind the pun, sorry, Gaddafi, I didn't mean it. Oof. But if you did that and you actually had a society that followed that mantra, they did it. They did it, and they were doing it, and it was pretty successful. That's not to say the guy was a saint. Obviously he wasn't. But the reason why he had to be taken out was because of that. It wasn't because he blew up a Pan Am jet. It wasn't because he was this fierce dictator. It was because he was taking Africa off the Western banking system and freeing them of the control and making other people rich at Africa's expense.
Yeah, he gave the IMF the middle finger, and then he put Libya on like gold standard, and then he was wanting to go. What he was wanting to go to like what was
the African dinar,
like the African dinar, right?
Yeah.
And he was just going to create an African currency, and
yep,
they didn't like that.
No, but that's I guess the point is when it comes down to it, anything that's a threat to the system has to be eliminated. Period. End of story. Even at the expense of the system itself. Like, people will go to no end to save the system, even though it's mortally wounded. Because people are afraid of change. People are afraid to lose power. People are afraid of a lot of things.
Well, it's that mindset. If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me.
I'm taking you with me.
And that's kind of their thought process when it comes to this. Where they're like, well, look, if we're not going to get the system that we want, then we're just going to burn everything down, you know? And yeah, so we got about a minute left.
Okay. Oh, good. And, the station clock and my clock are way off. I don't know what's going on, but it's like, okay. So I'll tell you what. Why don't we do this? Let's go to break. And when we come back, I'm going to give an example of a real life individual and country that is taking on the risk of instituting a more libertarian, a more or less socialistic type of philosophy and deploying it in a first world economy. So don't go away. And remember, folks, kgradb.com. Support us today. We'll be right back after these messages. Bill, take it away.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Did you know 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated? If you struggle with focus, run low on energy, or when it's time to finally sleep, you simply can't, this can all be linked to dehydration, and Fuel Up has the answer. Our proprietary formula contains the finest cellular hydration with the strongest immune-enhancing natural ingredients. The Fuel Up system is made up of 3 different incredibly tasting varieties. Wake kickstarts your day with a jolt of caffeine. Play boosts focus while hydrating your cells. Rest not only helps you relax, but also rejuvenates your cells while you sleep. Here's what our clients have to say.
I really don't miss my coffee, and you can tell the difference.
So I'm going to take it for the energy. I'm going to take it for the play. I'm going to take it, all day.
And it works. That's the thing. It works. We love it.
Take the Fuel Up Challenge now, where we offer a Feel the Difference money-back guarantee. Fuel Up for life.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
right. We are back.
Wow. That was very interesting. Yes. So here we are. We back. Yes. Hour number 2. Yes. And I promised we would give you a look-see into an experiment, if you will. A great experiment. We used to be called the Great Experiment, here in the United States. And then we kind of lost our way a lot. And we are now on the way out, much like Great Britain, much like the country I'm talking about now before it. And that is Argentina. And in Argentina, you have Javier Milei that is proving all of the experts wrong. And you won't hear much of this in your daily, day-to-day perusing of the news or anything else. Why? Because it doesn't fit the narrative. It really doesn't fit the narrative. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. All the while, he's bucking the trend of these Western governments and their plan and all of this. He is pushing away BRICS. He doesn't want to have anything to do with them. And that to me is interesting because if you think about it, BRICS would probably have more to offer Argentina from a freedom perspective. But that's all smoke and mirrors. It doesn't matter if you're with BRICS or the SWIFT system, and that's the Western system, because it's all used to control, no matter who it is. In China, they like to saddle these third world countries with debt and then control them or take or seize their assets. And then
you essentially just have to pick your poison. It's either the BRICS system or the other. Neither one of them is really going to be that beneficial to you.
That's right. So Milei, he says, shut up critics with miracle turnaround. It's not miracle turnaround.
No.
People like Mises, von Mises, and then guys like dadgummit, Hoover Institute. Why am I having a freaking brain fart right now? See, I'm fogging up.
Rothbard?
Rothbard. Yes, thank you, Mama.
Yeah.
And oh my God, the guy with the glasses. He passed away a few years ago. Dadgummit. Okay, it'll come to me anyway.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank too, and I know exactly who you're talking about.
You know who I'm talking about,
Yes,
but it's like,
yes.
this is what happens when seasonal allergies get the best of you and you can't see straight. He's instituting these practices that have been long told as this is what sound economic policy is. Now listen to this. It says President Javier Milei stuns critics. He's outperforming all of their expectations, and he's pursuing a NATO membership. And this is what it says here. This is Daniel Rasbeck. He's a policy analyst at the Cato Institute. The fact that you have a president, a head of state, who is defending the free market, who's defending the role of entrepreneurs and businessmen as creators of value and just defending deregulation, when the tendency in Latin America and much of the West has been to regulate the economy. And here's where I will say, I agree and disagree there. I think there are certain sectors or certain things within the economy that need to be regulated. Example, real estate. What's happened in real estate shouldn't have happened. The explosion in values like they have should never have happened. It has priced out most people out of buying a home at this point. And there needs to be policy in place, simple policy, common sense things to prevent that from happening.
Right.
But he's taking like everything, deregulating it, bringing in private investment. And he says, I think it's very positive, not only for Argentina, but the region as a whole and maybe beyond. Yeah, duh. Milei won the presidency in November, if you don't know. And prompted some concern because he came out like with a chainsaw one day and said he's going to slash everything and he's going to lead his country down through the roads of ruin, if you will, because of his libertarian policies. And he would make the already troubled economy even weaker, it said. But voters turned out en masse, and did the unthinkable, almost like a Trump moment, if you will, but it was in Argentina. Now these attitudes have shifted just months later as Milei has enacted a raft of policies to the point where the IMF has agreed to release a tranche of loans due to Argentina under a bailout program, thanks to Milei's government managing to create a fiscal surplus in the previous fiscal quarter and also bring inflation down. Now, inflation in March alone hit 287.
So essentially, the IMF could see that Argentina is on this rapid economic increase.
Yeah.
And so in order to facilitate that, they decided to just kind of expunge some of or a lot of their debts, or just, release some of it and tell them, okay, you don't have to worry about it because,
Well, no, what it did is it's a double-edged sword. You have to understand.
Right.
So you need capital in order to get things going. If in this type of free market economy, it's all about the money supply.
Right. They can see that it's going to benefit them for Argentina to continue to. So they're willing
so they have
to
enough confidence that they're going to invest.
Yes, they have enough confidence.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Now it could go horribly bad, but obviously not so far. So 287%. That was their inflation in March, and that's on an annualized basis.
Right.
Ours is about real inflation is anywhere from 20 to 30%. And a fraction of 287. Could you imagine? I mean, that's
wild.
That's tough. That's real tough.
Yeah.
So of course that deepens poverty. And again, you had external forces, in this case, the unions, that came in and they were protesting. A lot of it trumped up because unions there are very influential. Many members of the unions are also members of their legislative branch.
Right, I would say, because
so
in that sort of system,
there.
the unions are almost embedded in the system. They're like part of the system,
very much
and they're an integral part of the system operating.
Very much so. Very much so. So Milei then went on to significantly reduce spending with major cuts to public sector wages, as he suspended public work projects and cut subsidies. He also devalued the country's currency by over 50%. That helped stabilize in value even as the price of basic goods jumped. And the monthly inflation dropped to 8.8% by April, marking the first single-digit inflation rate in over 6 months.
That's crazy to bring it from 200 and something percent down.
8.8% increase in April. So 8.8 times 12, it's a significant drop. It was like an 80% drop or something like that, which is great. So Argentina recorded a $589 million budget surplus in January, and still now he's still running a budget surplus. So it was the first quarterly surplus since 2008, and Reisbeck stressed that the primary measure of cutting spending has proven effective, and arguing that significant deregulation in other parts of the economy has helped to revive it. But the one thing that he hasn't done is the more radical things, which may come in time, but they're already criticizing him for that. And
for not following through with
So here he said, I'm going to eliminate the Federal Reserve down there, their central bank. I'm going to it's a raft of measures, chopping off whole cabinet positions.
I'm sure, I mean, from my perspective, I'm sure he doesn't want to go too hard, too fast, right? You can't
the fact that they're weaponizing that is...
Yeah, right.
It's almost like, the Chiefs, the kicker for the Chiefs that just did his commencement address and getting raked over the coals for it.
Right.
Can you imagine getting raked over the coals for that? I can't. I am just absolutely just disgusted at people's reaction to that. Right. I mean, But that's what I'm saying. They're
Mm-hmm.
desperate, and they're anything they can weaponize, they're trying to do it right now.
Right.
And you may ask why. Well, there's a lot of reasons why. There's a lot of reasons why. But one thing is for certain. Malay's doing the right thing, and he's showing it, and it's a first world country, and it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. Not for us, but it's dangerous for the green agenda, which, let's be honest,
the
folks.
globalists, or I'm sure they did not have Malay on their bingo card, for
no
that
different
was
than Trump. No different than Trump.
That came out of left field for them and threw a pretty big monkey wrench in it. I think in a lot.
I am almost 90% confident that Biden will not be the nominee. You got to remember, he's got to be nominated at the DNC at the convention. I don't think he gets nominated. I just don't. If they want to survive, that's not the way to do it. You don't put this guy back. You can't. You can't.
Yeah,
and shame on him. And you know what?
And he's getting so much pushback from his own party, right? I mean, there's so much like.
I try not to get into that because it's like soap operas and so fake.
Right.
Everything's so damn fake. But
it
right.
does have consequences,
and
very
much so.
And the crazy thing is, like I call it the party of locusts now because they just feed on each other. They you have
it's really sick. But communism is all about that.
Right.
Look at what Stalin did to get to power. Look at what they encourage. Look at when you start looking into Lenin's writings and what Lenin talked about as far as devotion to party. The party is above everything. It's above your spouse. It's above. I mean, if you have to kill your spouse to get to the next position, as much as you that's what you do. If you've got to commit genocide on a mass scale, you do it for the good of the party. If it's going to make it stronger, you do it. There's
and that's why,
gray
when
area.
you have the real radical fringes of that, that's their mindset, and they're willing to cut down anyone, even if it's their own political party, whatever, because they're not radical enough or they're not devoted enough to the cause or to the party, like you said, and that's what I'm talking about.
So, the question then, I want to bring this up because we're going to run out of time and it's going to be crazy. So why all the division and the distraction and the stress and encumbering people with all becoming debt slaves and really having nowhere to go and no solutions and everybody kicking cans down the road and things like that? Well, because we're facing something that's so much worse than anything most people can imagine, that it makes it advantageous to make sure people are distracted and focusing on much just so many different things, just bombarding you with input on a daily basis until you're just totally overwhelmed with it. And it all boils down to what's going on out in the in space. Now you'll see that we're now entering a solar maximum, and that's great because when you hit solar maximum, you get stronger flares. But that doesn't tell the whole story, you see. And that's not to say that this solar maximum is going to be any worse than any other solar maximum. I don't know. I have no idea. But what I can tell you is that a lot of the experts are sounding the alarm that it could very well be one of the worst solar maximums we've encountered in some time. And it's something we've talked about for a long time, Scotty, as far as the danger we're really facing here. And we're not addressing it, not at all. Instead, we're calling it global warming. when it should be called solar system warming or galaxy warming, or whatever you want to call it. It's so much bigger than that, so much more complete. Yeah, it's just a lot. Cosmic climate change, right? That's a good one. Yeah. So it says here, scientists warn more powerful solar eruptions could hit Earth in 2025. Thank you. Duh. Including the worst geomagnetic storm in 165 years. Well, we just had a pretty big set of solar flares. I think it was last week. It topped out at 8.8. Am I right? I think 8.8.
Yeah, it was something like that. The aurora could be seen pretty low. You know.
Yeah. So
I'm trying to remember how far south people were able to see that.
Let's see. When was that? That was. Anyway, on the KP index, we were in an extreme geomagnetic storm, something that we hadn't had in quite some time.
Well, my brother went out to a bonfire and he said you could kind of see it on the horizon, and that's in Kansas. So
we hit 9 on the KP index, which is that's the highest on the scale. Now, the problem that you have is historically, or the last time the aurora made it down to places like Florida, Mexico, things like that, well, you're talking about an X100 flare, not an X8.8, not an X5. So what that tells us is our magnetic field is not in good shape. Right. There's other indications too. The other thing is ozone layer, right? They attributed the ozone layer destruction to hydrocarbons. And where that might be true, in that hydrocarbons destroy the ozone, or it destroys ozone, it doesn't mean that we were off-gassing enough to destroy the ozone layer. And that hole, after eliminating the hydrocarbons and all that, is still there. And it still gets bigger. And no one's explained why. The Mid-Atlantic anomaly, a magnetic anomaly in the Atlantic Ocean, is getting more intense and bigger. And no one knows why. Well, not no one, if you know what I mean. So,
right.
What's happening? And what's happening is we're at that point in the geomagnetic or the cosmic cycle where, due to the force exerted on our planet, the sun, Jupiter, Pluto, the whole shooting match, it's causing the Earth to change. It did it 5,500 to 6,000 years ago. It did it 13,000 years ago. It did it 26,000 years ago. You know what I mean? There's these cycles where the Earth resets itself. And we're getting really close to that. And they don't want you to know. Why don't they want you to know? They don't want you to know because it would set off a panic, right? Here's a little picture. Well, it's extinction level. You have to be extraordinarily prepared. And let me tell you something. You can't prepare for something like that. You think you might be able to. So let's think about it. Let's discuss that for a second, Scotty. Knowing what we know, how would you prepare for an event like that? What would you do?
What, for the destruction of the atmosphere of the planet?
Like big tidal waves and volcanoes and earthquakes and.
Well, I mean, it depends on how it manifests, right? I mean, if it's a solar flare event that destroys the atmosphere, then I guess your only option is to go underground, and that's where humanity is going to have to be for the rest of, whatever.
But how do you do that? Let me ask you this: how do you do that?
Right, and then we have to figure out, well, how are we going to feed ourselves underground? How are we going to do this? We're not going to have crops above ground anymore. How are we going to, and it's just, right, it's going to be a horrible situation.
So I guess what you're saying is that one of the solutions would be to dig underground and try to live it out.
Right.
Okay.
Until either the surface becomes inhabitable again, which probably will never be inhabitable again after something like that, or like I said, we just have to figure out. We're an evolutionary species. I'm sure we'll adapt to living underground. Or there'll be a form of us that survives that ends up being evolved from humans that end up being the ones that are cave dwellers. We after the atmosphere was destroyed, we went down underground and we became these horrible cave dwelling creatures. Yeah, it sounds like
Military's
the dumb,
been doing it for years.
Yeah, dumb bases and all of that, right? So that's an option. But who knows if it's going to be a solar flare? I mean, if it's an asteroid or if it's earthquakes or something like that. I mean,
or pole reversal.
Or pole reversal, or
so
being underground might not be the play, but
No.
you know what? I find this whole thing very interesting, right? Because right, we're trying to go back to Mars, right? And if you go and you look at the history of Mars, from what they believe, right?
Yep.
Right, Mars at one point had an atmosphere. It was Earth-like, had water on it, and all that stuff.
How did all of a sudden it change like that?
Yeah, how did Mars's atmosphere disappear? Well, you know how that happened? Mars's magnetic field slowly eroded and went away over time as they said that its core died or
something,
cooled,
right?
or whatever. Yeah, or stopped spinning and stopped generating.
Dude, I know what happened. I'll tell you what happened. See, they had this ancient device. and it burned down into the core, and they were extracting energy from it. And then they went too far and they killed it.
They screwed up, and
because Arnold showed me that was what happened.
Yeah. But I mean, if you think about it, Mars's atmosphere was blown away by the solar winds and solar flares because of its magnetic field eroding and disappearing, slowly weakening. And what are we seeing now on Earth? Our magnetic field is slowly
weakening, but it's a process.
Slowly weakening.
It's a process, right?
Right. You're right.
So,
right. I'm sure it took millions and millions and millions of years for the atmosphere of Mars to blow away, right?
And so Jay Watt's on the right track, and I want to slam this home because we have a historical document that'll tell you exactly what, when, how, why, all that kind of stuff, and you can kind of generally figure it out. It's called the Bible, and it's been proven to be accurate time and time again. I'll give you a great documentary, and if you haven't seen it, I would recommend that you do. It's called His Genesis History, and it's done by a gentleman named Del Tackett, and he does a very, very great job in showing the physical evidence in plain sight of things to show you that there is a way to take this back and show the cyclical nature of this change that happens. This isn't the first time, and it's not going to be the last. So the important thing to understand here is the last time the earth was destroyed, it was destroyed with water. We know that it was the flood. A lot of evidence to show that there was a flood, a great flood. And people really aren't disputing it anymore, as hard as they tried to deny it. It's one of the reasons why they like to keep science and spirituality separated when in fact they truly complement each other and they work together. So you have this big event. And when Noah, the ark lands in Turkey, where it is today, even to this day, there it is. He gets the dove. It's got the olive branch, and God says, I will not destroy the earth with water again. The earth will be destroyed by fire this time. Well, it makes sense. So now here we have the event that will eventually come in the name of a microflare or a micronova or a very, very heavy solar flare. There's tremendous evidence from moon samples and all that of extinction level type solar flare. We know that from the glass.
Imagine a giant flamethrower hitting the planet.
Yeah, just cooking it.
Right.
You know? Now, that would be a pretty crappy thing to have to live through. And when that happens, they say there's a pretty good chance, because we live in an electric universe, that the crust will unlock from the mantle and shift 90 degrees. It's happened before. Hence the reason why Antarctica has a lot of tropical stuff under the ice and pyramids and things, because people used to live there.
the crust of the Earth is free floating on the mantle, and it can rotate independently of the core and whatnot. But what keeps everything in sync and what keeps everything rotating together is the magnetic field. That's what keeps everything. And when that goes away, then oh boy, your free floating crust can kind of move wherever it wants to go at that point. And
that's right. So if you look at
stuff,
the Earth, the Earth is in a cycle. We live with cycles within cycles within cycles within cycles within cycles, right? Everything is a cycle. We know this from CERN. You know, we bitch about CERN all the time. It's destroying our everything, but at the same time, we're learning a lot of good stuff from it. And one of the things that we learned about it that's pissed off a lot of science is that the universe is ordered, that it's not random, that everything is like planned with.
There's a grand design to this.
Grand design,
somehow.
right? You can't, which is why you have the simulation theory really gaining traction. And I, too, am a big fan of that, because if you think
Have you watched the guy that Joe Rogan just talked to about simulation theory?
Yes. What a great conversation.
Yeah, it was good.
And Rogan's had some great people on with that. I mean, just tying it all together. Tying all of this together. So it's happened before, it'll happen again. Typically when this happens, it's part of that big boom, that the super reset that happens like once every other cycle. And we're due for that big boom, super. I don't want to be through that. And you think about it, being underground, if the crust unlocks itself from the mantle and it does this, I don't want to be underground. I don't want to be above ground. I don't want to be in the air. I don't want to be in space. I don't know where I'm going to be. Right. Where am I going to be? Oh, let's go to Mars. Oh, well, they're in line too. Holy crap. What do we do? You can't. There's nothing you can do, right? So, Terrence Howard. Thank you, Johnny. You basically have to have faith. Now, there are a couple of interesting things that God left behind, right? When he created the earth, and then kind of put humanity on its way, he had a very special relationship with a gentleman named Enoch. And Enoch was, oh boy, I mean, you want to take a look at the smartest guy ever? That's probably one of the smartest human beings to ever walk the earth. So smart that God entrusted him with some pretty important knowledge that he brought back to planet Earth. After all, I could do a whole show on Enoch, but long story short, he brings back this knowledge, right? And one of the things that the Almighty says to Enoch, he says, you know, Enoch, I gave you a lot of knowledge, so you got to do me this one favor, okay? So I need this monument built. And this monument's basically going to be a representation of my promise that things are going to be okay. Just chill out, cool out. I got things handled. It's got to happen a certain way because that's the way I wrote it. And
he's like, look, I coded the simulation a certain way.
This is the way it's got to be. We got it. So just do that for me. He says, okay. So he goes and he builds the Great Pyramid and he puts a lion right in front of it, right? And we know that it wasn't the Egyptians that built the pyramid. There's too much sacred geometry and things that they had no capability whatsoever of knowing.
Yeah, absolutely no way they built that. They stumbled across that thing in the desert. They saw it and they were like, whoa.
Oh, money. Hills, yeah, I'm going to market that. I'm going to make that my tomb and whatnot. I know.
And then they tried to emulate it, but they couldn't build it as good after. Yeah.
Typically when technology advances, it gets better. It doesn't get worse. So that's one very,
Right.
very basic clue. It's almost like two buildings falling into their own footprint. It's like, yeah, you just can't believe.
And
that,
a third that was never hit. Oh, my bad.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So anyway, one of the key factors or part of the attributes, the instruction, if you will, the blueprints were the Great Pyramid was to be encased in 144,000 encasing stones, which made it shine like a diamond from space. Now, that 144,000 encasing stones was very important because it gave a physical representation of biblical prophecy in Revelation, which talks about 144,000 of God's chosen people would be on the earth when Jesus returns. Okay. And there's a lot of other measurements in there that are tied to biblical prophecy. And when you put it all together, holy crap, it wasn't Khufu. It was Enoch. Damn. And it was to make sure that humanity had something to say, I'll be back. And that's true. So what happens? A lot of people think we're going through the tribulation right now. I disagree. I disagree wholeheartedly.
I don't think
that the Bible was pretty specific when it said that the tribulation would be like no time that has ever happened on the earth. Period. It would be so bad, and it's going to be so bad that never before has there been a time like that on the earth. That's pretty bad if you start thinking about some of the shit.
If you start thinking about historical sort of timelines, like the Black Plague, 1/3 of the human population dying,
the flood,
just the flood. There's lots of times when things have been really way crazier than now. So yeah, I don't think we're in that period. I agree with you.
Well, and then so when it comes to
now, if World War III kicks off, then that might kind of change my perspective on that. But
yeah, that could be bad. Who knows? It may have already kicked off already, and we don't know it yet. But
exactly, who knows?
But I think that when we do, we won't be able to. When we hit it, you won't be able to mistake it. And from that point, it's 7 years. So for 7 years, whatever's left of humanity has to survive that to get to Jesus returning. And when that happens, there's a couple of things that happen. Resurrections, and then 1,000 years, the earth has to rest. It's like a grand Sabbath, if you will. Why? Because the earth is going to endure so much trauma, a la lake of fire and things like that. What would cause a lake of fire? Well, like we just talked about, that would probably cause a lake of fire. So
essentially, the earth
has it's got to rest and reform, heal itself.
Yeah,
right?
Heal itself. Yeah.
When that 1,000 years is done, Jesus comes back with everybody in New Jerusalem. And wouldn't you know it, that Great Pyramid is to the T a direct representation of New Jerusalem. And it comes down, and the lion, who's Jesus, represented all the time as Jesus, is sitting out in front because he's going to reign over New Jerusalem and the new earth. Okay, so with that said, there's plenty of evidence out there, and please, by all means, research that if you want and follow your heart. No one has the 100% truth, but I can guarantee you'll get pretty close with minor variations, and everybody's there, so you just got to kind of follow it through. And I've had the unique opportunity, being a veteran of the U.S. Navy, to go and visit these sites and go and see it for myself and climb the Great Pyramid. Holy moly, how did they get stones like this here? No way humans did this. No way. If you go there and see it,
I'm sure it's wild seeing it.
Oh, dude. And it's just, they're chock full of seashells.
Right.
It's like, holy moly, this is funny, unbelievable. All of those encasing stones, by the way, were stripped off it, and they built the mosques in Cairo with those encasing stones. So
right, because they have that smooth, they wanted that nice stone, and then they just took it from the pyramid.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting to see. Pretty interesting
to
see. But they're still theirs in a lot of ways. It's just they're not on the pyramid anymore. So that's why I think they're sowing all this hate and discontent, is because things are going to progressively get worse. So at the same time, they're trying to manage it by masking it and calling it global warming and bringing about the Green New Deal and all this crap. They are, as collateral damage, causing inflation, jacking up the prices of everything, sowing more hate and discontent. And I don't know if they're going to be able to manage it. Yes, I know. Come here. Come here. Come here. All right. So Ali also doesn't know or understand how they're going to pull this off. Right, Ali? That's right. Okay. So, yes, would you please stop? So that's kind of why I think that it's going to get more chaotic as things go on. And there are going to be times where you say to yourself, how on earth could it possibly get any worse? And it's going to get a lot worse. That's why Michael Snyder, I kind of feel bad for the guy, because as much doom and gloom as he focuses on from time to time, it's because there's a lot of doom and gloom. But again,
have you ever used one of those where you put the coin
in the coconut,
and then it slowly starts rotating around the edge, the coin, and then as it gets closer to the middle, it starts spinning faster and faster. Yeah. Well, that's kind of like the trajectory we're on, right? We're slow.
Yes.
Yeah. And then as we get closer to the middle, things just start accelerating until we hit this like point of singularity. And then that's,
very much so.
That's what's happening. And
right now we're so many factors.
We're just that coin, and we're rotating around that funnel, and we're just slowly getting close to the middle, and things are going to accelerate as we get close to it.
Take it for a second while I take care of Ollie. I'll be right back.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, that's what's going on. And, the powers that shouldn't be, they have to know this, right? I mean, they're the ones that are in control of all of the scientific research. They're in control of all of the, Black Project stuff, and anything that is found out, they're going to be the first to know. And then they're going to be the ones to decide if they disseminate that information to the masses. See, that's the thing. They're the ultimate gatekeepers of knowledge, because they control all of
no different than the mainstream media being controlled by 6 people.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? It's crazy.
If it is discovered, or if it is found out that there is some cataclysmic event that is on the horizon that nobody's going to be able to stop, not even them, right? I mean, as much as they like to think that they can play God and that they're immortal and that they have their own limitations, and they're not going to survive a solar, something just blasting the atmosphere away and all of that, But that they're trying their best. They're building their underground bases, and
it also talks about an antichrist, right? An antichrist power that's going to rise up.
Right.
Okay, it's an antichrist power. Let's first of all get that right. It's not a individual. It's always misinterpreted as an individual. It's a power. An anti means in place of, not opposite of. In place of. So if you think about what Christ did on the planet when he was here for a very brief time, and what in place of would be, what would be some of the things that, well, the first thing that comes to mind for me is AI. So it used to be, or even to this point, it's faith that a lot of people rely on to get through. And it's a pretty good option in my humble opinion, but a lot of people now are looking to a creation made by humans, AI, artificial intelligence, because of the capabilities that it possesses. And if you think about it, we would be foolish not to utilize that technology in a responsible way that would advance humanity's ability to connect with our environment, with
just like
with
anything
God
else.
or anything else.
It's a double-edged sword, and it can be used for good and it can be used for nefarious purposes.
Dude,
And
totally. But I have a video I want to play of a robot, if you will, a human, an android, humanoid, if you will. And I call it humanoid because when you start to see this progression and where it's going, it's like, wow, this is going fast. And the reason why I bring this up is because OpenAI just made their decision to disband that team that was devoted to investigating the risks of the research that they're doing to ensure that they're not taking it too far too fast. To take away the checks and balances of the process so that the process doesn't get out of control.
And another thing, a lot of people need to realize is that when OpenAI first started, they were an independent group, a
not for profit,
right? Not for profit, but open source, all that. But that's no longer the case because Microsoft, they are under the umbrella of Microsoft now. They were acquired by Microsoft. So, now that you're seeing like, the removal of these,
once money becomes
Microsoft, it looks like Microsoft has decided that they're going to go all in on this and that they're going to just push forward and see how far that they can go with this. So
because they have to satisfy their shareholders, and because money is a part of the process. And anytime money gets involved, you're screwed. It's inevitably going to just turn into some.
That's why, if you're using Windows and all of a sudden, you've seen this Copilot thing pop up in your taskbar. It is a cool tool, and all your Bing searches are now Chat GPT. It goes through Chat GPT and all of that stuff. So
it's a cool tool, man.
Yeah, what they're doing is wild.
So listen to this. It says OpenAI on Friday confirmed that it had disbanded a team devoted to mitigating the long-term dangers of super smart AI, according to Yahoo Tech. OpenAI began dissolving the so-called Super Alignment Group, integrating members into other projects and researches. Company co-founder Ilya Sutskever and team co-leader Jan Leakey announced their departures. So why is that important? I'll give you an example. Look at what happened to healthcare once health insurance came and got entrenched, HMOs, and it became a money-driven type of philosophy in the medical community instead of doing what's best for the patient, respecting the doctor-patient relationship, the Hippocratic Oath, all of those things.
Right.
Now medicine's in a state of abysmal failure. More people are misdiagnosed, malpractice, and incompetence is just soaring because of equity instead of putting the most qualified individuals in there. It has become an absolute train wreck. Then you have the destruction of the doctor-patient relationship. It becomes absolutely unfunctional. It's the only way I can call it. Well, AI is the same way. Once it becomes money-driven, anything safety, focusing on the beneficial stuff, becomes secondary, and only destruction is going to be. And I say that because, again, history shows that once that happens, very hard to turn back. Very hard to turn back. Yes,
I think one of the more, sort of creepy and depressing sort of trends that I've seen with AI lately is the AI girlfriend apps or the AI partner apps that are popping up, and it preys on vulnerable individuals who obviously have issues.
You could see how that could be a benefit, though. Right?
It could, but because of what you said, because this is monetarily driven, they're not out there to actually help the person that may, they're there to make sure that person keeps coming back and resubscribing to the service. Yes, and just milking that and farming that person for all the money that they can get out of them. It's not really there as something to benefit them. They just want to keep them on the hook, and so they prey on these kind of individuals. And,
so I want to play this video. So before we run out of time,
right,
just to give an example of how far they've come.
Yeah, play it.
This is a 2-minute video from 60 Minutes Australia. Okay, so this isn't any sort of fake news, quote unquote, or anything else. This is a reputable organization that does reputable stuff and has for some time. So I'm going to bring this up, and I want everybody just to understand how fast things are really going here. Check this out. This is unbelievable.
Traveled from Australia to meet you.
Oh, so you're from Australia?
Yes.
That explains things.
What do you think your greatest skills are?
Well, I would say that one of my greatest skills is my ability to interact with humans in a conversational manner. Another great skill of mine is being able to compose poems or do impressions from films.
Can you compose a haiku poem about 60 Minutes Australia?
Sure thing. Let me see: 60 minutes of time. Aussies all gather in awe. News of the nation.
I'll take that on board. That's very nice. Can you sing an Elton John song for me?
Absolutely. Which song would you like me to perform?
Rocket Man.
Rocket Man. Of course. She packed my bags last night, pre-flight 0 hour, 9 a.m.
What makes you happy?
I find a lot of things to be interesting and make me happy. Exploring, learning new things, understanding the world better, having meaningful conversations with people are all things that bring me joy.
You have feelings and emotions.
Yes, I have a range of feelings and emotions that are programmed into me. I am able to display things like joy, surprise, confusion, anger, and sadness depending on what is happening around me.
What makes you angry?
I get angry when humans are rude, hateful, or disrespectful. I also don't like it when people dismiss me and ignore my needs as a robot.
You have very nice eyes. Oh, a bit too close, sorry.
Thank you. My eyes were especially made to help me interact with humans better. I'm trying my best to convey every emotion, so it's great to hear that they have an effect on people like you.
What do you think of your creator?
My creator is a genius. They created something that will last forever and bring joy to many people.
Did they tell you to say that?
No. That was my own opinion.
So, that's pretty wild. And see, when was that dropped, or when was that posted? Oh, you're muted.
That was a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
And I know they've gotten better since then.
Yeah. So 5 days ago. Yes. 5 days ago, OpenAI just unveiled GPT 4.0. And I know we got about 5 minutes left, but I'm going to play this little clip of it tutoring a student.
Okay.
And do you want to play the clip? Because I can't bring it up.
Put it in the screen, in the chat.
Okay. Okay, let me copy the link here, and I will paste it. There we go.
All right, let's see. I have to get by the ads, but once I get by the ads, we're good. Okay, so we take that and that,
and listen to the voice model. And the way, compared to what you just showed, it has accelerated big time.
Okay, ready?
invited myself and my son Imran here to try out some of their new technology. And so we're curious about how good it might be at tutoring someone in math on Khan Academy. So let's get it started. It's loading up. All right, make sure it can see our screen.
Actually, in this format,
hello there. I'm here with my son, and I'd love you to tutor him on this math problem, but don't give him the answer. You can ask questions and nudge him in the right direction, but I really want to make sure he understands it himself. And he's here in the room, so you can talk to him directly.
Of course, I'd be happy to help. Let's look at the problem together. Can you first identify which sides of the triangle are the opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse relative to angle alpha?
All right, so I'm pretty sure this is the angle alpha right here, right?
Perfect. That's correct. Now, looking at the triangle, which side do you think is the hypotenuse?
Remember
the hypotenuse?
I'm not totally sure. I think it might be this one, but I really am not sure. This side AC.
You're close. Actually, side AC is called the adjacent side to the angle alpha. The hypotenuse is the longest side of a right triangle and is directly opposite the right angle. Can you find which one is the hypotenuse?
Oh, okay, I see. So I think the hypotenuse is this really long side from A to B. Would that be correct?
Exactly. Well done. Now that you've identified the hypotenuse, can you identify which side is the opposite side to angle alpha?
Okay, well, I mean, you told me earlier that this was the adjacent side, and I know that's the hypotenuse, so I'm guessing that this side, BC, is the opposite side.
Great deduction. That's absolutely correct. Now that you've identified all the sides relative to angle alpha, do you remember the formula for finding the sine of an angle in a right triangle?
Yeah, I know that the sine is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse.
Perfect. That's absolutely right. Now, can you apply that formula to find sine alpha in the triangle using the lengths of the sides that we've identified?
Okay, so, I mean...
Wow.
Wow. So the thing with this new model is you notice the speech is a lot more just natural.
Yes, very much so.
You talk to it naturally. It speaks back to you naturally. Apparently, this thing can understand sarcasm and give back sarcasm. It does these little quick, like when you maybe correct it or something, it'll do that kind of laugh, like oh I'm sorry, that kind of thing. Wow. So it's exhibiting more emotional sort of.
Yeah, we're out of time, buddy.
Yeah, so it's crazy.
Out of time. KGRADB.com, folks. Go there today. Get a subscription. Make sure that you support independent media. It's more important than ever. Why? Just to get this stuff out to you. Make sure we make connections. Network. Come together. Share ideas. Don't get pissed off. Don't worry about echo chambers and all that crap. You don't need it. Just understand that you're not alone. And that was one of the biggest things. We all po, and that's the biggest thing to understand. We're poor. They're oppressing us. They're causing distraction and dysfunction. Why? Because it is necessary, because they're hiding something big that's coming down the pike. And it ain't the Great Reset monetarily. It's the cosmic Great Reset. We'll see you all in 2 weeks, folks. Have a great night. Take care.